Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. I don't know about you, but I've had a hankering for some Lovecraftian horror as of late. And considering it's been a hot minute since we played Bloodborne, I figured it was time we remedied that. But we can't just play Bloodborne. No. We've got to play it in a way that no one else in their right mind would play it. And so, after a little thinking, I believe I've found the solution. Today, we're going to find out. Can you beat Bloodborne with only a bow? But Lemon, I hear you say. This is Bloodborne. Isn't that the Souls game with the guns? The heck are you talking about? Oh, sweet summer child, how little you know. Bloodborne does have a bow and arrow, but it's hidden behind an NPC questline in the DLC, so you're forgiven for not knowing about it. Simon's Bowblade, a long-reaching curved sword that transforms into a bow as its trick weapon. This thing is amazing in the right build. The curved sword is fast and has great reach, and the bow shoots quickly and can do some hefty damage if your blood tinge stat is high enough. Unfortunately, it's a little out of reach at the moment, considering it's hidden all the way in the DLC, and I'd rather not kill any bosses before we get our hands on it. But I've got an idea. If we get the attention of Canis Lupus here, and then ask him nicely to help us take a shortcut to another part of the game, we can... You know, I've never done any kind of glitching or skips in this game. This may take a while.
You know what doesn't take a while? Making a delicious meal with today's sponsor, Factor. All you need to do is order your favorite meals online and they ship right to your door. Majestic! With Factor being recently purchased by HelloFresh, they have all sorts of meals to choose from and can work around whatever allergies or food preferences you have. What's more, meals take less than 5 minutes to prepare. So if you're like me and desperately trying to fit eating properly in between your hectic work schedule, Factor's got you covered with their fresh, never frozen meals. Simply remove the food from the packaging, then poke a few holes in the plastic cover. You can use a fork or knife, or you can take the Backlogs approach and just absolutely gently poke holes in the plastic top with a YouTube-friendly butter knife, whichever you prefer. Once you've done that, just chuck that bad boy into the microwave, let it cook for 2 minutes, then after letting it cool for another 2 minutes, get it out of the packaging and onto your plate. And there you have it, a fully cooked meal, ready to go. You can also get several add-ons, like these juice smoothies. The apple kale wheatgrass was easily my favorite, but all of the juices tasted very fresh and boast some crazy nutritional value. Now, Kat and I tend to make home-cooked meals fresh from the garden whenever we can, so I was a bit skeptical at first. But after trying several meals together, we both came to the conclusion that Factor meals are most of the flavor of a fresh home-cooked meal, but with none of the prep. And they never had that weird rubbery or dry texture you'd normally get when reheating leftovers. And if you've only got a limited amount of time, Factor's meals are about as close as you can get to making something from scratch without having to spend 30 to 45 minutes cooking it. So if that sounds good to you and you'd like to give Factor a try, you can head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code BACKLOGS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box.
Oh, good, you're back. And just in time. Turns out I was supposed to mash the shoulder buttons as fast as possible when he grabbed me. Whoops. But with that little mishap corrected, we've officially skipped about a third of the game. I grab a few consumables around the map while I'm back here, since we'll need some loose blood echoes to actually get the stats we need to even wield the Bowblade. Try to talk to Yosefka, who gives me the cold shoulder, but is more than happy to let me phase through her entire body to open a door. Yeah, see, this is why I don't do glitches. Things just get all sorts of weird. What up, girl? You just standing on a table? Yeah? Alright, follow that energy, I guess. So, while I make my way through the poisonous lake, let's talk about what the heck we're even doing down here. Simon's Bowblade, like we said, is stuck in the DLC, and in order to get the key that opens up the DLC, we would have to beat 2 bosses, Father Gascoigne and Vicar Amelia. This being a bow-only run, I'd feel bad if we killed those 2 bosses with a weapon that wasn't, in fact, a bow. So, I decided to do a little sequence breaking in hopes that we would be able to skip those 2 bosses. But me being me, I didn't do my research ahead of time. I knew about the werewolf skip, but was banking entirely on the idea that I might be able to make my way to Vicar Amelia from a back door and maybe, just maybe, activate some sort of in-game trigger that causes the key to appear. But despite being able to get all the way to the password door, you can't actually open it up from the wrong side. And if we can't open it from this side, that means there's no way to access the DLC starting point. Curse you, based god! However, all hope is not lost. I reached out to my fellow challenge runners to ask for help on the matter, and before I knew it, JK Leeds was in my DMs, suspiciously excited to give me the weapon. Thanks for the help, my guy. Now my suffering can continue. Wait, so let's look at our weapon of choice. As you can see, it currently has a C in skill and a C in blood tinge, and while our starting class gives us all the skill we need to wield it, we're still missing the proper amount of blood. However, thanks to all the loose consumable blood echoes we picked up while running around, we actually have enough to level up our blood tinge to 9, which is exactly what we needed. And with that, the run can officially begin. First things first, let's talk about our attack options. It has a strong attack, which can be charged to do even more damage, a light attack, which does very little damage but keeps us mobile and gives us the ability to dodge out of the way of oncoming attacks, a dodging light attack, which is very similar to our light attack, and 2 melee attacks, one of which you desperately swipe at enemies with your arrows, and the other where you do a running jump before smacking your enemies in the face with your bow proper. Personally, the melee moves feel like cheating to me, so I won't be using them during this run. Now, here's the tricky part. Because I've decided that all melee options are off the table, this run will be limited by our good friend ammunition. And in case you've forgotten, you can only hold 20 arrows at a time, at least initially. However, there are several methods of increasing our damage and our ammunition totals throughout the run, all of which we'll probably need to make this build work. I collect as many upgrade shards as I can find, pick up some new duds that are only partially covered in blood and gore, and find and use as many loose blood echoes as I can in an effort to increase my blood tinge. It's probably obvious to most of you, but because we're only using our weapon's ranged attacks, the only stat that affects our damage output is blood tinge. The skill only applies to the melee aspects of the weapon, which means we only need to maximize 1 stat instead of 2. Hopefully that counts for something. Because if I'm being honest, it's already not looking good. Even with charged attacks, regular enemies currently take 3 arrows each. Thankfully, a multitude of enemies are guaranteed to drop ammunition, so it's not as bad as all of my previous crossbow runs have been, but it's still not great. Just for funsies, I decided to test my strength against the Cleric Beast. I already knew this wasn't going to be the run, but I just wanted to see what it was we're up against. And it's here that we've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that Bloodborne is very clearly a game designed around melee combat. Given enough space, I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of bosses aren't going to be able to handle the fact that we're constantly out of range. The bad news is that our damage is absolutely abysmal, and unless we can find a way to boost that damage, all the range in the world won't save us.
Enough trembling in your boots. A hunter must hunt.
Well, you heard the lady. Time to put our blood where our mouth is. Wait, no, stop! I don't actually want to— I grabbed the last of the upgrade materials in the area, and do some big game hunting, where I'm reminded that a fully charged arrow to the back of any enemy will actually set them up for a backstab, that I can't actually use. But hey, at least it'll give me a moment to breathe from time to time. I upgrade my bow to +1, then push forward to the only other boss in the area, Father Gascoigne. Cleric Beast was clearly too much for our build, but maybe Padre here is a different story. There's the windup, and the pitch. Well, GG everyone, we almost had him, but the numbers don't lie, is what I would say, except for one small thing. One little strategy that I learned very quickly with the flamethrower only run. You might run out of your original 20 bullets, but every blood vial you own is another 5 arrows in your quiver. Which means, if we can get good, we've essentially got a grand total of 120 arrows to our name. Now, if only I could get good. It takes a couple of minutes, but after running in circles taking random pot shots, Gascoigne finally enters his 3rd phase. And it was right around here where the fight got difficult. It would appear that my break from all things FromSoft has made me weak, and my instincts keep telling me to roll away instead of towards the danger. A critical mistake in Bloodborne, and one that it does not take lightly. However, in future attempts, my muscle memory begins to take over, and I even find a couple guaranteed windows of opportunity for charge attacks. Unfortunately though, it's still not quite enough. I'm just not playing well enough. If I keep taking hits, I won't have enough arrows by the end of the fight to finish the job. But after almost a dozen attempts, it happens. My fingers remember the patterns, and my brain finally lets go, letting instinct take over. And after almost 2 hours of attempts, the first boss of the run has been hunted down. Things can only improve from here. What the hell am I talking about? That's not true. That's not true at all. With my fingers itching for more, I go back to the Cleric Beast. Our damage hasn't improved, but my patience and expectations have. Now that I know I'll be digging into almost all 120 arrows, it's a little easier to remain calm about the dwindling supply of ammunition, which in turn keeps me from making silly mistakes. Most of the time. I'm still not perfect, but it is starting to click again. And with more than 11 blood vials remaining, it's done. Goodbye, Cleric Beast. I will not miss your constant screaming. I sprint my way through Yharnam, dodging and weaving my way through the streets and stairways, and eventually find myself in Old Yharnam. Plenty of upgrade materials to be found here, and the bow tends to make pretty quick work of the scurrying beasts. I make the mistake of trying to collect items while Gerahn is still alive, then make the mistake of trying to tell Gerahn to lay off. He did not take kindly to that. Alright man, good talk, thanks for listening. I upgrade my bow to +2, jam my first blood gem into it and get a whopping 4 more damage, then go back to Gerahn to get some revenge. Yep, we showed him. A few more upgrade materials, a slight increase in damage due to the Bowblade now being +3, and with that, it's time for our next boss, the Blood-Starved Beast. So mostly good news with this one. All those increases to our damage are definitely paying off. A charged shot does 135 damage. That's almost as much as a normal melee attack. On top of that, my hunch that a majority of the bosses in this game wouldn't be able to handle ranged attacks is proving to be pretty accurate. It just keeps lore walking at me and letting me take pot shots at its face. Until it doesn't. Yeah, no, that's fine, I wasn't using that artery anyway, have at it. Thankfully, round 2 goes much better. Bloodstar Beast does get more aggressive with each phase, but his attacks tend to leave him wide open for charge shots. What's more, while BSB is usually a pain in the quiver during his 3rd phase, the fact that we don't have to stand next to him to do damage means we don't have to be poisoned for the rest of the fight like a melee build normally would. Granted, we still get poisoned due to how aggressive BSB is, but still. And with a few final shots to the hair, that's all she wrote. Bloodstar Beast killed on the 2nd try. Not too shabby. In the interest of increasing my damage, I let the local bag boy kill me and wake up in Yarhar Ghul's jail cell. I'll just see myself out. Same way I came in? While we're definitely not strong enough to take on any of the enemies or bosses in this area, that's not really why we're here. That is. Oh, and the moon rune. There are moon runes here. Now granted, we can't actually apply the moon runes just yet, since we'll need to kill the witches of Hemwick first, but having that in our pocket just means we'll be able to level up that much faster when the time comes. Combine that with all the twin bloodstone shards we're finding everywhere, and this trip was well worth the effort. I upgrade the bow to +5, then make a quick visit to my favorite... Are those Elden Ring pots? We're not friends anymore. I do a little exploring and pick up a communion rune, which will let me have more blood vials later, make my way to the abandoned workshop, and begin my collection of umbilical cords. That sounded really weird when I said that out loud. Anyway, I bully a beastie for withholding the secrets of pyromancy from me, take the shortcut behind the church gates so I don't have to spend 20,000 souls on a freaking key, then make my way to the Witches of Hemwick. Nothing to see here, easy game for babies. But in all honesty, I mostly just made my way through the area, snagging any goodies I could while ignoring pretty much everything else around me. And after upgrading my bow to +6 and jamming in the best blood gems that I have at the moment, it's time. Time for the Witches of Hemwick. Oh god dang it, I always forget to remove all my insight before coming here. So fun fact about this fight, you can stun like the witch over and over again with the backstab attack. If you shoot her normally, she'll disappear and make you play hide and seek again. But if you keep going for backstab shots, she'll never disappear. Needless to say, I took full advantage of this fact when the second witch showed up, doing massive damage basically for free. Each fully charged shot is doing over 200 damage, and with the way her AI is reacting to my shots, this means I can pump hundreds of damage into each witch with minimal risk. If I hadn't come into the arena with insight, I might have been able to cheese this fight even harder. But, as it stands, it's a bit unnecessary. That's 1, and that's 2. First try, let's go. With access to runes now a thing, we can now hold 4 more blood vials than normal, and I've also increased the amount of echoes gained at a not insignificant amount. Getting stronger all the time. Which means it's time for Vicar Amelia. I've got a good feeling about this one. And good feeling gone. In all honesty, it's not that bad. Amelia only has 1 or 2 attacks that let her close the distance between you, and our arrows can break her limbs, which is always a good time. What's more, using the bow in this fight actually removes one of my least favorite things about video games when you have to fight a boss that fills the entire screen. I can actually see what's going on. One of my biggest complaints about these kind of games, be it Bloodborne, Monster Hunter, or whatever have you, is that I can't read bosses' tells if the only thing I can see is their feet. So this is a nice change of pace. What isn't a nice change of pace is how many times Amelia keeps healing. I was able to break her out of it once, but that doesn't do me a whole lot of good when she decides to heal 3 times in a row. I'm just glad we decided to fight her when we did. If we had less blood vials or less damage, this fight might have gotten really ugly really fast. But as it stands, an ounce of prevention saves the day. Another first try. At this point, our blood tinge is up to 33, which is a little short of the soft cap of 50, but hey, every little bit helps. We can also access the DLC now, so there's that. But that sounds like a struggle for another time. As of right now, the struggle bus has arrived at the Forbidden Woods. Fun fact, you can use the binocular as a makeshift aiming tool. Slightly less fun fact, the bow's range leaves a bit to be desired. But with those Snapple facts out of the way, I think it's time we take the fight to the Shadows of Yharnam. And I immediately have regrets. So the Shadows, bless their hearts, are very good at dodging your attacks. Give them enough time and they'll sidestep your arrows. But squeeze in a shot when they're in the middle of an animation and you'll be able to break through their defenses. Annoying, but doable. Or it would be if I wasn't constantly getting ganked by the other 2. Normally I wouldn't care, but with there being 3 health bars to whittle down, every health vial counts. Guess this is another instance where I just need to get good again. First things first, I need to figure out a strategy. And any RPG tactician worth their salt will tell you it's better to focus fire on 1 enemy rather than all 3. Sorry buddy, but you know the rules. You always kill the mage first. After that, it's just a matter of picking my next target and holy hell, that was basically my entire health bar. Okay, new plan. Get rid of the heavy hitter first. Oh right, I forgot. When you have 0 points put into vitality, they're all heavy hitters. Still, there does seem to be some validity to the whole kill the biggest meat shield approach, since he's guaranteed to do massive damage whenever he hits, while the other two have to get a bit luckier with their attacks to do the same amount of damage. We're still gonna have to get good at this fight though. I keep taking chip damage, and every bit I take makes this fight more and more impossible to clear. But then, an epiphany. My main issue, as we just said, is that I keep running out of blood vials, and therefore ammo. But do we really need 120 arrows to beat these goons? Or is my damage high enough that we could just rely on our blood vials to carry us through? After all, the main reason I keep running out of blood vials is because I keep getting hit. And I keep getting hit because performing a charge attack roots me in place, letting the other two shadows sneak up and smack me around. If one were able to get in, get out, would that be the tipping point? Only one way to find out. I take my time and keep my distance, waiting for the right opportunities for charge attacks, and utilizing uncharged heavy attacks whenever I can to keep the damage up when I'm uncertain. Get down, Mr. President! And just like that, we've managed to make it to Phase 3. It's at this point that things start to get a bit dodgy, since I always have a hard time judging how to avoid the snakes. And because of that, I'm starting to run very low on blood vials and ammunition. Thankfully, the last Shadow of Yharnam must have gotten tired of playing, because he decided to stop dodging my attacks and just eat 2 light attacks in quick succession. And just like that, no more shadows. Well, no reason to delay the inevitable. Time to see how well ranged weapons do against a boss that forces you into melee combat. The damage isn't a problem so long as you hit Rom's body, so that's good, but you have to constantly keep moving to try and get Rom's body into view. And if you're too far away, you won't be able to circle fast enough to do it, which means you've got to get closer. And also need to time your attacks carefully, because Phase 2 introduces Rom's magical ranged attacks. Combine that with the fact that our mobs hit like goddamn freight trains, and you've got a bad time. I take out my disappointment on Master Willem, then try to use the same technique on Rom. Unfortunately, the bow's range is deceptively shorter than you'd think, so trying to use a monocular for a long-range attack would just get me smashed to death by spiders. On top of this, locking onto Rom is also a recipe for disaster, as the camera loves to get confused and lock onto mobs instead. This fight took hours. Hours of trying strategies, failing, trying again, failing, grinding out more health vials and ammunition, and then trying and failing again. Hours turned into days. Days turned into weeks. It seemed like no matter how big my numbers were, this fight was unbeatable from a skill point of view. I had hit the blood-tinged soft cap days ago, and at this point leveling to get vitality was going to take additional time I didn't really have. Phase 1 was simple enough, and Phase 2 was doable after discovering a few animations where I could sneak an arrow or two in, but by Phase 3, there was just too many spiders. God, I miss my flamethrower. The vitality helped keep me out of one-shot range, barely, but that didn't help much when I inevitably had to weave my way through the spiders to get into range. Things seemed hopeless. Madness began to creep its way into the crevices of my brain. And rather than fight it, I gave in. I let the madness take hold and did what no sane person would do. I entered the Chalice dungeons. Sprinting my way through levels, I ignored everything in my path unless absolutely necessary, using all that I had learned against the dungeon's multitudes of guardians and monstrosities. And I had learned well. And for my diligent knowledge seeking, I was rewarded. Blood gems. The desperate man's salvation. Gripped by an increasing madness, I pressed further into the dungeons, slaying everything Bloodborne had deemed worthy of a health bar. I put their moniker of boss to the test. But these paltry gifts are not enough. If I want to transcend the vacuous Rom, I must go deeper. Deeper into the depths of the dungeons, where ancient techniques of fire and death are taught. Passed down from generation to generation, eon to eon. None can withstand my volleys. And still, the gifts are not enough. I will not settle for such measly rewards. We must go deeper. The madness escapes the crevices. Truly, we have lost our minds. Surely such architecture cannot exist this deep inside the earth. Do you see? Do you see it? My head. My head. What? Where am I? I don't remember how I got here or what I've been doing for the last week or so. I guess we'll just push on. Maybe I'll remember what I was doing later. With ever so slightly increased damage, a new strategy begins to evolve. No lock-on, no charged attacks. Just sudden, unpredictable bursts of aggression. Rush in, lodge an arrow in Rom's thick and bulbous hide, and rush out. The timing must be just right. Any potential resistance from Rom herself or the spiders around me must be taken into account. It's slow and tedious work, and Rom does not let my attacks go unpunished. For something described as vacuous, she certainly does seem to be learning, but learning too slowly. A hole in the swaths of enemies appears, and I take the risk. and the brick wall crumbles. But I'm battered and bruised. My head throbs with the effort, and something feels different. Perhaps it's best if we just move on. Halfway there now. Halfway to ending this nightmare. Turns out, Rom was a bigger wall than I realized. Her defeat has opened up Yahar'gul's second phase, which not only has better blood gems, but also the next tier of upgrade materials, boosting my weapon's damage even further. And with our bow more powerful than ever before, I push forward. On to new horrors, and to the one reborn. I go around the outskirts killing all of the bell women, who thankfully go down in a single charged attack. You know, despite having played this game to 100% completion, I've never actually seen what it is these women do, since my history with Demon Souls demands that they die immediately. Apparently, if they're left alive, they launch fireballs down from above, and occasionally heal it? I guess? I don't know. I'll just have to take the community's word for it. In any case, time for the fight proper. There's some weirdness going on here. I had more luck when I refrained from using the lock-on, and even was able to break him down with only a few arrows. All things considered, this boss was super easy for the bow. The One Reborn's most dangerous attacks are all within melee range, and its only ranged attack, where it summons corpses from the beyond, is easily avoided if you just take a break from shooting it to walk away slowly. And after only 1 or 2 missteps, the One Reborn is sent back to the void from which it came. Oh, bye Fletchy, I just realized we almost forgot about Carl. Hey buddy, sorry for the delay. I've not been well. Carl here attacks very quickly, so charge attacks are a no-go. But at this point in the run, my damage is so high that even light attacks are enough to break him down. Even when he enters phase 2 and gains electrical range attacks, the constant pressure and damage keep him at bay. And with the final few arrows, Carl goes down on the first try without landing a single hit, and with only a single quiver of arrows. If that doesn't restore my confidence, nothing will. Time to join the Birdcage boys and enter the lecture building. The Gudents are pretty weak to blood damage, so my bow makes pretty quick work of them, and nets me a great place to grind out blood echoes. But I didn't come here for echoes. I came here for progress. First up, the Nightmare of Mensis. And our good buddy Mikolash. Hey, where are you going? Hey! Well, this was certainly a weird one. Mikolash's AI has no idea how to deal with ranged attacks. I deal with his minions with relative ease, then have to do a little dance with Mikolash in order to make sure he doesn't dodge my arrows. Essentially, if you can trigger his noodle hands, then you've got all the time in the world to get off a strong attack. Easy enough first phase, moving right along. I jump down the hole ahead of Mikolash, fire off a charged R2, and then, wait, what? What's going on here? I've never seen this before. Is he all right? Oh, okay. He was just waiting for me to step closer. Or not. The heck is going on here? You know what? Screw it. I've suffered enough in this run as it is. I'm not above taking a handout. Up next, we have Amygdala. Amygdala? I'll be honest, I have no idea why everyone claims it's pronounced one way over the other. Like, yeah, the amygdala is the part of your brain that is responsible for control of emotions and behavior. Duh. But the characters in the game say Amygdala. And wouldn't it make more sense that Miyazaki is playing around with pronunciation and words? That's what I'd do if I was creating a world. I don't know, man. Y'all are weird. Oh, hey, we're done. Ooh, worth it. In any case, we're getting close to the end of the game, so it's probably about time that we collect all the umbilical cords. Huh. Okay. That's a bit of a problem. What if we take a little bit more precise aim? There we go. That's better. Onward to Castle Canehurst, because if I don't do it now, I'll forget. Hello, Santa Claus. I know I'm a bit early this year, but I've been really good lately. I mean, so long as you look past all the wanton murder. Phase 1 is simple enough. Just attack from range and dodge his attacks. Most of his range attacks are pretty slow, so there's no real risk involved if you time it right. And before you know it, we've entered Phase 2. His sword raid attack is easy enough to cancel, since you can just quick-shot the sword to remove it. And despite my fears that range attacks wouldn't work in Phase 2 for some reason, due to his magical barrier, that fear was unwarranted. He's a bit more aggressive than I'd like, but it's nothing like the consumable-only run, where my attacks quite literally did not work no matter what I did. Annoyingly, at the end of the fight, Ogarius thought it'd be funny to spam his sword rain attack, which got really old really fast. But with several swords piercing my body, I decided enough was enough, and just quick-scoped him to death. First try Logarius. Never thought I'd see the day. Onward to the Upper Cathedral Ward. First up is the Celestial Emissary. And while it won't be hard, I'm not sure which one is the right one. Oh, wait, is this just like any other Dark Souls game? The boss is the one without a health bar over their head. Yep, that's the secret. Once I discover that little tidbit, it doesn't take long to whittle the emissary down to phase 2 and force him to go kaiju mode. Aw, he's even cuter now. Unfortunately for him, growing bigger didn't help him out much, since he can't hide behind his minion mob anymore. Well, that was fun while it lasted. Time for some macaroni. Kraft mac and cheese. It's what's for dinner. The Daughter of the Cosmos is another one of those bosses that simply can't handle long-range damage. Her attacks are all short range, and at this point my damage is absolutely disgusting, so she doesn't have long to figure out a way to counter my build. She almost got me with a charge attack, but unfortunately was just out of range. Must not have been able to see with all those arrows in her eyes. Credit where credit is due, she did catch me off guard with one of her slam attacks, ruining the no-hit fight I had going. But with one final quick shot, Oodles of Noodles goes down. First try, not even close, GG, easy. Well, that's all the side bosses. At this point, we've only got the last 3 main bosses of the game to push through, and the DLC. Might as well finish the main game first. Hello, Murgo and friends. You seem to be doing well. Unsurprisingly, Murgo's wet nurse struggles quite a bit when facing off against a ranged opponent. Things get a bit dangerous in Phase 2, since I no longer have time to perform any charge attacks, but my tried and true strategy of just running around the arena until the clone disappears seems to work just fine. After that, it's just the same old, same old. I might be a bit overpowered at this point. Hey Murgo, what weapon did the angry archer use? A crossbow. Well, I thought it was funny. Ah well, never was cut out for comedy. Guess we might as well head into the DLC. There's not much to see in between each boss, so we'll keep it short and sweet. Ugh, I said short and sweet, not vomit-inducing. Jesus. As expected, the DLC doesn't pull any punches. Just like any other Dark Souls DLC, the bosses are all super aggressive and leave very little room for error. Ludwig's ranged attacks actually reach a lot farther than you'd expect, which means I can't rely on just peppering him from the other side of the arena, and tanking them simply isn't an option. So instead, I go with the tried and true method of using heavy attacks to do significant damage, but only using charge attacks when I know I've got an opening. And before long, I've got him down into Phase 2. Did that last shot do 1300 damage? Well, you know, that's cool I guess. Ludwig's second phase isn't too bad. Just dodge the moonbeams, get off an arrow whenever you can, and maybe don't corner yourself on the staircase when Ludwig is about to do his biggest and strongest attack. Round 2 goes much better when I decide to stick with quick attacks, rather than trying to squeeze in charge attacks. The extra mobility keeps his quicker attacks at bay, and once my volley breaks his poise, it's over. I've drawn first blood from the DLC. And you know what they say, if it bleeds, we can kill it.
Good hunter, have you seen the thread of light?
What, this one? I guess not. Cut the camera. Into the research hall, where we find the living failures. They certainly live up to their names. Well, the last half of it anyway. But with them dead, there's only 3 more DLC bosses left to go. Whoa there, young lady. I'm a married man.
Oh, I know very well how the secrets beckon so sweetly.
I can't tell. Are you hitting on me or threatening me? You know what? I'm just gonna assume it's the latter. And good news, she doesn't dodge your arrows. Some of the time. The trick is to attack her when she's in the middle of an animation. And if you're willing to risk it for the biscuit, you can actually lure her attacks with just enough time to squeeze off a charged shot. Some of the time. When Maria enters Phase 2, her blades get deceptively longer, and timing your dodges will become much more important. You can't keep your distance, so quick attacks and iframe dodging are your only friends now. And this becomes even more true in Phase 3. It was a close fight, and I almost ran out of arrows, but in the end, Maria becomes a pincushion like all the rest. They took the little ones. Frodo! Where is Frodo? I present the One Ring to the clock tower, ruin someone's very hard work in favor of my own personal fun, and find the end of Simon's questline.
I'm afraid I've made a botch of things.
Yeah, you have. Because of you, I couldn't get this weapon naturally. Do you know how many people are going to yell at me in the comments now?
It isn't fair. It just isn't fair.
Curse you, unending tirade of pedantic comments. Curse you! So yeah, time for the Orphan of Kaz. But first, it's time to break this game over our frickin' knee. As every veteran of Bloodborne knows, the Winter Lanterns suck, and should be avoided at all costs. Unless you want the thing they drop. Cursed blood gems. Highly situational, these blood gems offer you incredible power, but usually at an unbearable cost. Exhibit A. Both of these blood gems offer some insane damage boosting abilities and can be slotted into any weapon slot, but their downsides make them a pain to work around. Unless, what if there was a cursed gem that had a negative that didn't apply to us? Why, that'd just be a free 20-ish% boost to our damage with each gem, wouldn't it? Well, hang on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because there is. Behold, weapon durability down. Normally, having this modifier on your weapon makes your weapon degrade at a rapid rate, breaking it in only a handful of hits. But wouldn't you know it, using the ranged attack of the Bowblade doesn't use any durability. And 0 times any number is always 0, which means we get all that sweet, sweet damage for free. And just in time too, because if there was ever a time we needed more damage, it's now. Time for what is arguably the hardest boss in the game. Alrighty then. For the record, I have 30 points in Vitality, so I don't even want to hear about how I'm a glass cannon. That's just the Orphan doing his thing. Much like other melee-focused bosses, the Orphan's AI does struggle to handle our ranged attacks sometimes, getting caught in a loop where it keeps trying to escape my attacks. But more often than not, it's business as usual, with the Orphan doing its best to close the distance. And then, after approximately 17 arrows, it's time for Phase 2. And of course, I immediately panicked and mistimed a dodge roll, with the Orphan finishing the job pretty much right afterward. Good job, Lemon. Solid performance. Professional work, really. Well, the good news is that the first phase is easy enough that I can get to Phase 2 pretty consistently. The bad news is that I am absolutely terrible at Phase 2. And in a run where every mistake costs me 5 ammunition, being terrible at Phase 2 means I don't have enough damage to finish the fight. God, that's infuriating. I'm not sure why, but there are several bosses in the Soulsborne series that are just a complete mental block for me. Doesn't matter if I'm doing a challenge run or a normal playthrough, some bosses just wreck me no matter what I do. I'm so close too. Look at that. 5 shots would have probably been enough. I've got the damage. My only problem now is quite literally a skill issue. To exemplify how bad I am at Phase 2, take a look at the current situation here. Entering Phase 2 with more than 20 blood vials left. That means I took down more than half of the Orphan's health with less than 40 arrows. And yet, every time I get to the end of this fight, I'm sitting there, dead on the ground, with no blood vials or ammunition left. At this point, I don't think there's any way to increase our damage. We've soft-capped our blood tinge and have a 65% damage boost with my blood gems. I've even stacked runes to give me 27 blood vials instead of 24, in the hopes that it'll make a difference. There's no going back. Persistence is our last hope. Stay mobile, stay alert, stay alive. This too shall pass, because the only way out is through. Not much more to go now. Only one more beast stands between me and the end of the game. Time to see if Lawrence still fears the old blood. This fight is essentially just the cleric beast all over again. Stay out of range, and the first phase is an easy victory. At least, it will be if you don't roll into a corner. It feels like years have passed since I last fought the cleric beast, and my fingers have to shake off the rust. But eventually, I make it to Phase 2. And now the true challenge begins. Lawrence gains a ranged attack, blasting lava across the room, and also becomes much more aggressive, constantly dragging himself towards you in an attempt to keep up the pressure. Thankfully, my struggles through the Chalice dungeon have not been in vain, and my new armor shakes off most of the fire damage thrown my way. With a final guttural scream, it's over. Lawrence can finally rest, and this nightmare can end. Only 2 more bosses remain, the first hunter and the beast that turned him into prey. First up is Gerahn, host of the Dream. I was expecting a fight similar to the other hunters I've faced, but this is just sad. This isn't a hunter. This is an old man, hobbling towards me with all the ferocity of a child who's lost his mother. I had higher hopes for Phase 2, but it's more of the same. Just a broken man with a broken spirit. Nothing more. A pitiable end, which leaves just one more beast on my bounty board. The Moon Presence. This fight was actually really interesting, not because of its difficulty, but because of the different perspective. Normally, this boss fight devolves into a wild mess of flailing limbs and tentacles, but this time around we can see the attacks as they come at us. And because my damage is slow and steady, I actually get to see every attack Pale Blood has. I can honestly say I've never noticed these blooming blood balls before. It's not exactly an effective attack, but it's still pretty neat. But despite her best efforts to destroy me, in the end, the Moon Presence can only delay the inevitable. Arrow after arrow pierces her undulating hide, and it isn't long before she realizes that the end is nigh. She reaches out, perhaps in anger, or perhaps in kinship. I can't tell which. All I know is that the night is dark and full of terrors, and I am one of them.